Okay, everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. To have a really special review for you guys from the brand Kurono Tokyo by Hajime Asaoka. Now, these are basically a made-in-Japan production line in parallel with Hajime's high-end handmade pieces that often fetch from $25,000 to upwards of $100,000. Now, in terms of the type of watch, this is an everyday dress watch. Some key characteristics and design when you're looking for something you can wear every day that still dresses up pretty nicely. Of course, you're going to want to find something with that clean, classic, minimalist design and something that is also quite sensibly sized. This is their Reiwa 2024 anniversary edition, and it's part of their Grand Series line. The Reiwa was originally introduced in 2019 and translates to beautiful harmony and is reflected in the Kurono design with its complex two-part dial, with this latest and final edition being inspired by the beauty of the Japanese lakes formed through a volcanic activity. To give you an idea of how complex these dials are, on average 5 dials out of every 100 produced are actually accepted. So very high failure rate on these, so the ones that do make it are something very, very special. Now, in terms of the pricing, it's also reflected within that. These went for $1,790 plus $55 shipping for a total of about $1,845 if you were lucky enough to secure one directly, with typical similar pre-owned Kurono Tokyo models easily doubling and tripling in value. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay guys, so let's go ahead and take a closer look at this gorgeous piece. Check it out, quite outstanding. I actually did put a bit of a reflector here so that you guys can actually get a better look at the handset. So don't mind it if the dial ends up looking slightly washed out. That's only because it's actually reflecting off of a white board that I had propped up here. Without it, you're going to see that that dial is deeply inky and black, but then also you're not going to be getting enough reflection to actually check out the hands. So I'm just going to go ahead and place that back here so you guys can kind of get the best of both worlds. So, let's just let this focus in. Let's pay attention here. Yes, glorious. All right, guys, I'm excited about this one. Definitely a brand that is driven by absolute passion, and I have to say it absolutely does translate in the metal. Now, this has a 37 millimeter diameter, is 10.9 millimeters thick, and that is including that crystal, which you can see sits quite proud of that fixed bezel. And in terms of lug to lug, guys, very manageable at 43.4 millimeters. Stainless steel. It's also fully polished, and it's polished to a very high standard, guys. Check out the deep luster there, and then the nice thing is it does contrast nicely off of this beautifully satinized case back, which is very, very handsome in its own right. So very, very nice, all etched there, and pretty straightforward. Again, it's a simple aesthetic but a very complex execution in terms of what you're actually getting. Now, this crystal is a beautiful box dome sapphire, guys, and again, another thing is look at the edges of that sapphire. There's no milkiness. This thing has been cut to perfection. So beautifully sculpted sapphire here that just gives you that beautiful flowing line. You can see steps up from the bezel to the crystal, just very, very clean and very, very pleasing to the eye. Also, you're getting a push-pull crown, which is unsigned because it's all high polished there. It all kind of comes together. Inside, some of you might be a bit disappointed, but this is a Miyota 90 S5, which has a 42-hour power reserve and beats at 4 hertz or 28,800 vibrations per hour in terms of the beat rate. And, I'd say that's probably one of the things that people have a problem with. But at the end of the day, it's a Japanese watch with a Japanese movement, a thin, high-spec Japanese movement. Are there cheaper watches with this movement? Absolutely. But the expectation that he's going to hand make a movement from a $25,000 watch and put it into a watch under $2,000 is probably not super realistic, and there aren't really too many options in terms of more expensive or more high-end Japanese options, and this is a watch that is made in Japan. So again, it's just one of those things. I don't mind it. I think it's cool also when a French brand uses a French movement, even if they're not made in-house. Swiss brands using Swiss movements, of course everybody gives them props. So it's one of those things. I know it can be a point of contention, but I think if you're looking for that, then you're just looking for reasons not to like this watch, which is fine. You don't have to like this watch. It's not for everyone. Clearly not. I mean, look at it. It doesn't look like a watch that would just be great for everyone's taste. It's definitely very specific, very targeted, and I think it hits that particular target really, really well. Now, getting into the case back, just really quickly, just touch on that again. It is screwed down, and the nice thing is beautifully satinized and nicely brushed. Getting into the dial, guys, applied indices that are highly polished, as you guys can see, that two-tone dial, that center section there, just deep inky black, just almost just falls to infinity, and then with that beautiful surround there, that perfect shade of bluish green. So very nice. The hands are also curved, which is great and very period correct for this Art Deco style, and very high polished. And then in terms of the water resistance, guys, this is a dress watch, but it does have 3 atmospheres or 30 meters of water resistance, and it's a push-pull crown. So again, you're probably not going to want to go swimming with this thing, but if you do get it pretty dirty, the nice thing is you can typically rinse something off pretty easily. Here you wouldn't want to get this beautiful strap wet or anything like that, but the nice thing is, if you get it pretty grimy, you can use water to help clean it off, but I wouldn't want to submerge it or anything like that. Now, the lugs here, although this is a smaller width at 37 millimeters, the nice thing is it does still have 20 millimeter lugs, which is what I think help it remain quite wearable even for larger wrists, such as my own at about 7.5 inches. The strap here is just probably the nicest OEM strap I've ever seen come on a watch, and I don't mean at this price point, just in general, this feels so soft, so supple. It's just beautifully done. Look at the stitching, just absolutely uniform. You even have the finished edges that match that same tone of that blue green. Really gorgeous. Other side, very nicely done. Again, this black half skin, it does have the beautiful embellished sides that match the dial. It does taper down very classically to 16 millimeters. Even the keepers here, guys, look at these keepers. They also have the trim just beautifully executed there. So it just adds another dimension to just how nice this is. Of course, like high polished surfaces tend to do, they're going to get pretty smudged up, but let me give them a quick wipe here just so you guys can take a nice look at how beautifully executed even a simple thing like a milled tang buckle is. So very, very nice. 16 millimeters, so great taper on there. High polished, of course, matching that high polished case. So with that said, let's actually get this piece on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7.5 inches, this wears pretty perfectly, like a dress watch should. It should be small, it should be slim, and it should be striking, and it absolutely achieves that. Look at this. And again, this is an aesthetic that is signature to the designer. This isn't something where a new brand comes along, they take something and they make it affordable. No, this is something to where it is inherent and it is ingrained within their design aesthetic, and it is just so beautifully done. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, you're going to get a fair amount of distortion. It's going to make the watch look a little bit bigger, right? You're like, oh man, why is this 37 look like it's just overpowering this big old 7.5-inch wrist? It's really not, guys. What's happening is there's a bit of perspective distortion just because of how close my wrist is to, actually, you know what? There's a little bit of, let's get that cleaned off, because of how close it is to the lens. So what I'll do is keep my wrist nice and low here, and then just tighten up the frame ever so slightly so that you guys can still get a detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And now you're seeing, wow, this is a smaller, more petite watch, and it is still, I think, completely fine, especially when you think about the occasions you would wear this. Typically, this is something you'd wear with a long sleeve, you know, something a little bit dressier, and this peeking out from underneath your cuff is just pure magic here, guys. My gosh. This is one of the brands that honestly helped me come around when it comes to the idea of wearing dress watches casually, because it's so dynamic but so simple. And man, this color combination is just something very special. I love how bright it is, how it pops, but also it can be still quite sedate and I think very, very versatile at the same time. So it's not just this one trick pony that just pops, you know, off of a picture or as it's laid out, but I think this is still going to look really fantastic on the wrist, and you don't need to necessarily try to match these tones with anything, because I think it just has such a beautiful look that I think stands out well enough without overpowering any other aesthetics or any other, you know, styles that you might be wearing. So like I said, I think it will be much more at home in a dressier setting with longer sleeves. But at the same time, guys, this can be quite elegant even with just a white t-shirt and some jeans. This definitely tells a bit of a story about the owner in terms of what your tastes are and your appreciations, you know, for, of course, things and designs of the past and how they can integrate into a more modern daily package. So with that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera back out, get this piece. Actually, we'll lay it out for some, there's no loom on here, but we can definitely get some closing thoughts and also work in, of course, a beautiful low light transition so we can really appreciate this dial. Okay, let's go ahead, and actually we don't want to completely hit the lights just because, guys, there's no loom. It's just going to be completely pitch black. So we'll kind of get this going in a stage here. And there we have it. All right. So although there's no loom, I always do like to work in a bit of a low light transition because you're always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So as I see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. And my goodness, those outer rings, that pop, that flash of color, it's just immaculate. I mean, this is quite iconic. And to know that they're retiring this dial style, you know, I think just makes it all the more special. I look forward to seeing what they roll out next. But for me, I'm so glad that I was finally able to secure one of these, which to me, of course, is the signature aesthetic and the signature dial design for Kurono Tokyo in terms of really capturing Hajime's personal tastes and his style, that beautiful art deco influence there, just very, very clean, but of course with that absolutely clearly Japanese spin. So very, very cool, guys. Whew. I mean, I could just enjoy drooling over this watch for, you know, tons of time, and you guys probably wouldn't want to sit through all of that. But I will go ahead and close things up here. On the wrist, this wears really nicely. Definitely on the smaller side, but compact. But I think still having plenty of wrist presence, especially thanks to that dynamic style, and even the colorway, which I think is still quite versatile. In terms of model variants, there's various similar iterations that were previously released, but this one will be the last of this two-part line in terms of that dial being two pieces. In terms of comparable models, it's really tough to compare this since it's such a niche piece. There's not a lot that's out there like this, and that's one of the reasons why this is so special, why it's so desirable. It's because there's nothing really that's out there that's like this. I mean, the closest competitor I could think of is something that looks nothing like this, which would be something like the Junghans Max Bill, another watch, dressy watch that I love, an everyday, dressy, modern kind of meets contemporary. That's more Bauhaus. Definitely beautiful German aesthetic, and hey, it has a Swiss movement. Here, this is definitely just a completely Japanese take and kind of rework of just this idea of a dress watch. And what does that mean, right? You have the minimalistic elements, but then you also do have these beautiful, complex elements peppered in, and I think it's just really, really awesome. And yeah, you can tell that I love this watch. If you guys watched the unboxing, I was quite giddy, and I still am. I'm still a bit in a honeymoon period, but I have gotten hands-on with these types of watches in the past. I've reviewed other variations of Kurono Tokyo watches, and I will say they haven't really lost their luster. There's still something about them that are real, especially, I mean, geez, if the colorway speaks to you, right, and you already like the design aesthetic before when it was a little bit more sedate, something like this should resonate. But for me, guys, bottom line, although the overwhelming market demand for these pieces have often overshadowed the excellence of the product itself, I have to say, having it in hand, it's very apparent why so many folks have been committed to paying a premium for these watches. And for those of you who don't hold on to these pieces, the way that I do, these are some of the few independent microbrands that gain value after initial purchase, which is great. I mean, that just doesn't really happen within this space. And if you're already getting upset thinking about flippers, guys, the nice thing is Kurono Tokyo doesn't want people buying these to flip them, and they'll even void warranties for people that are selling them within the first 6 months of ownership. So that's something to also consider. They want these to get into the hands of the right people, in the hands of enthusiasts that want to wear these. There's just more people that want them than they are available. So I mean, there's only so much you can do. So, closing this out, while yes, the movement inside may feel a bit pedestrian, it's a Japanese watch with a Japanese movement, so it's all well within the theme. It's not like they're this watch from some exotic, European locale, and they chose to get a Japanese watch, Japanese movement, I should say, for the cost savings. I mean, they're a Japanese brand and chose the best Japanese movement that they could source in terms of, something that could be sourced from a third party. So there's just something very pure about the watch with a signature aesthetic intrinsic to its own brand. And this is considered really the pinnacle of that particular design style with this type of, the two-piece dial, getting back to that. So, which I think further distills the model, offered an extremely potent experience in the metal that I think really does justify the hype. So I'm thrilled for everybody that was able to secure one of these. I've also been, of course, keeping up with all the comments. If I'm posting photos in some of the Facebook groups or on Instagram, it sounds like there's quite a few of you that were able to secure one of these, and everybody's pretty hyped about getting them on the wrist. So let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you did manage to secure one of these, go ahead, let me know the story, how you guys feel. If you didn't, what are you looking for in terms of some of their newer releases as they kind of transition and pivot away from this particular design aesthetic? But with that said, guys, again, let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.